Good evening. Welcome to board meeting for Grand Blanc Township for Tuesday, March 5th. If you could all rise for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Robertson, would you please call the roll?
I would be happy to, Mr. Supervisor. Trustee Hugo is absent. Trustee Fike?
Here.
Trustee Raridan?
Here.
Trustee White?
Here.
Treasurer Kilmer?
Here.
Myself, of course, I'm here. Supervisor Bennett?
Yes, present.
6 members present, a quorum.
Thank you. And now I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda. Motion by Dr. Raridan, supported by Trustee Fike.
Motion by Raridan, supported by Fike for the agenda. Trustee Raridan?
Yes.
Trustee White?
Yes.
Trustee Fike?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Treasurer Kilmer?
Yes.
Supervisor Bennett?
Yes.
6-0, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. And now we will open the microphone for public comment. I don't see any cards completed that you would like to make public comment. Seeing no public comment, we will bring it back to the board, and I'll entertain a motion for an approval of the consent agenda at this time. Mr. Fike makes the motion, supported by Mr. White.
Supported by, motion by Fike, supported by White. Trustee Fike?
Yes.
Trustee White?
Yes.
Trustee Raridan?
Yes.
Treasurer Kilmer?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Supervisor Bennett?
Yes.
6-0, motion passes.
Thank you. And now, item 6, old business. We are going to get an update with our strategic plan on the campus plan, and in particular, our DPW and fire department building update. Mr. Limita?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. This evening, we're still making progress. We have meetings, it seems like every single day, but maybe every other day. This evening, I've asked Rick Erickson to come in, Plant Moran, Real Point, as you know, the owner's representative, and they're working with us as we get through the design phase of the new project. We had hoped to have a little bit firmer pricing, kind of where total project, where we're coming in at. We probably will have that in maybe a few days, but some of the soils, the unsuitability of the soils on the north side of the old Playland property were found out through this process, so we're still waiting as they work through that and what we're going to have to do to make sure that we don't have a lot of settlement, although I think that's the wrong word they keep saying for it. The building will have to be up on some piers, but there will be, where the concrete is, we're just making sure that those loads are going to be appropriate. Those are obviously very incredibly heavy vehicles that we have for the DPW that roll in there. For those of you who were around back when they built the police department, and for a decade after, we went through some pretty significant settling with the police department that resulted in some cracked walls and some leaks, some repairs around the windows, the brickwork. And it took about 10 years, but that property, again, the soils were probably somewhat unsuitable, built sort of on a swamp. This isn't necessarily a swamp over there, but what we uncovered as we did some of the digging is, unbeknownst to us, clearly back in the 30s and 40s, there had been some facilities there that resulted in tires, rope, old rubber, I think some conveyor belt equipment, basically some junk that was buried down into those soils about 15 feet. It would be incredibly expensive to dig 15 feet out and fill that back in with suitable soil, so we're trying to find the most cost-effective solution. We should have those numbers for you, like I said, later this week. In the meantime, I did ask Rick to be here this evening, and just, you're going to be asked later on in the agenda to consider that resolution for the notice of intent. And I thought this would be a good time to get this update through as part of our strategic planning process. Rick's prepared a brief PowerPoint presentation to show you, and then be happy to answer any questions that the board may have on the project moving forward. Rick?
Yep. Thanks, Dennis. Yeah, last time we were here presenting, we were just wrapping up the schematic design phase. We're now at the tail end of design development. Only thing we are waiting on, again, is the final DD cost estimate. And again, some of that's contingent upon how we decide to resolve the soils issues that we stumbled upon here. But I'll quickly give you an overview of the process for design development, where we are currently at, where we think we're going to land budget-wise, and then a quick update on schedule. And then I do have some floor plans to share and some nice renderings that the architect has developed that will really do a good job of conveying what the building's ultimately going to look like. So since the completion of schematic design, BKV and DAG, who are the architects of record, have further refined the site plan and the floor plans, and you'll see them here shortly. They have not changed much since the last time we presented. There's been some refinement, but holistically there hasn't been many changes. We've established the interior finishes, developed the mechanical, electrical, technology, and plumbing systems. As Dennis had mentioned, we did hire a geotech engineer to conduct soils investigations and did determine there were unsuitable soils in various locations. I think we ended up doing, 6 test pits in probably over 25 soil borings over most of the site. We have also engaged with ISCG, who is the furniture vendor. We've selected furniture. We are waiting for final cost estimates for the furniture. We do have preliminary cost estimates that are reflected in our budget that I'll show you here shortly. Rewald did submit the preliminary DD cost estimate for construction. Right now we are just over $24.5 million. And that does include can't remember the percentage, but that does include some level of contingency just for design items that may not have been captured in the documents yet. That also does include some level of soil stabilization. So it accounts for some of the, I think what was being considered at the time is rammed aggregate piers to help stabilize the soil, essentially where they dig a big hole in the ground, they pack it full of aggregate, and they tamp it down to help densify the soil. So some of that is reflected in the construction cost that we see now. We did, as we did at the end of schematic design phase, we did have a brief value engineering discussion to see if there was opportunities to further align the budget with the project scope. There are, at one point we thought we needed some screen walls per the township's ordinance to hide the rooftop equipment. We're going to move the equipment so it's not visible from the road, so that's an opportunity to save on the cost for the screen wall. Again, the geotech work, we are working, we have the architect, the structural engineer, the civil engineer, the geotech engineer, and Rewald all working together to come up with the most appropriate cost-effective solution for the soil stabilization. And again, we hope to have that along with the cost by the end of this week. Rewald, as I mentioned, submitted the DD cost estimate, and the revised should be submitted by the end of this week. And then finally, DAG and BKV has commenced with construction document phase. So they're continuing to develop the drawings as we wait for the DD cost estimate to be completed. Typically, there would be a pause, but we feel that we've got enough contingency in there where we're not going to have to, there's no risk of voided engineering or redesigning to a great extent. So it's kind of a quick overview of the design development activities. Any questions on that work?
This area, I imagine, has those issues with soil. It, you know, depending on where you're at in the state, you know, the west side of the state tends to have sandier, better drained soils. This area has more loam and... Well,
I think this is more specifically related to the old structure that was on the site, and some of that debris wasn't completely removed. Okay. As Dennis had mentioned, we're finding old piping, tires, debris that you normally wouldn't see in soil. So the last time we were here when we presented the schematic design cost estimate, we were just around 28 million. The DD cost estimate that Rewald is submitted with a $24.5 million construction budget. That with the soft costs brings us in just over 30 million. So we're 30,667,958 currently. And again, that'll be updated once we get the final DD cost estimate, but I think that's tracking pretty close to where we think we're going to land, and that does include, in addition to Rewald's construction cost estimate, we are carrying, I think it was $2.5 million in just project contingency.
Can you just speak up a little?
I'm sorry.
Can you speak up? Just
Yeah, is this on? Yeah, sorry.
It might just bend it
Move
up
it a little closer there.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Did you want me to go over that?
No,
again?
I think I got the gist of it, but
Okay.
I just
Sorry.
struggle.
Yep,
Old ears.
I get it. And then just a quick update on the project schedule. This all still aligns pretty well with what we presented at the schematic design presentation. We are in construction documentation phase. We are targeting the bid and award process to start mid-May. With construction, there's conversations now of starting evaluating whether there's some advantages to doing early bid packages. So for instance, early site work package there might be some advantages to doing that from a scheduling standpoint and a cost standpoint. So that's something Rewald will help us understand.
Say that one more time. What might be
It's an early, so there's, the traditional way is you have a complete set of bid documents and you take that to a contractor and they give you a quote and then you start construction. We have an opportunity where we can just break out the site work package, bid that early while the construction documents are being completed.
Gotcha.
Just allows us, and it's an opportunity to get ahead of the game,
Right.
depending on where you're at in the weather and the season. So we're right now targeting construction completion November 20th of 2025. And there'll be a couple months of closeout, and that's where we take care of all the punch list items, do the warranty documentation, and all that. So onto the design development drawings. Again, these are primarily the same drawings you guys saw in the schematic design presentation. There's just a little more refinement. This is the overall site plan. Go to the overall floor plan. This is the overall floor plan. So if you recall, the fire station component is this area here. You can see the 4 apparatus bays, and then the bunk rooms are over here. This is the primary public entry with a bigger lobby and some common shared space. Then that kind of transitions over into the DPW admin area. That's their office functions. And then just north of that is the fleet storage facility with a wash bay in there. There's just a blow-up area of the fire station floor plan. Again, with the 4 apparatus bay, get a better idea of how some of the offices lay out. The day room, we've got the kitchen and dining down in the north end. We have the public lobby. It takes you to a community room, takes you to a counter for DPW, and there's also a counter for the fire station. And then again, this is admin office area, just pretty typical office stuff here. Got offices, a conference room, briefing room, some lockers, just some miscellaneous parts in storage room north of that. I know this is fairly dry. If there's anything you want me to dial down into, I'd be more than happy to, but there's some nice renderings at the end here that I'm kind of eager to get to. So I think that'll help convey the direction of the project a little better. This is just the fleet storage area. These are the elevations you saw last time. Not a lot has changed here in terms of building massing or material selection. Then this is a rendering that DAG has developed, gives you an idea of what the building's really going to look like, from the material selections to the massing to some of the landscaping. This is the public arrival and public parking.
So that's facing west then, right? So you'd be on Dort Highway right there?
Correct, yeah, this is a view from Dort Highway. And they are in the process of developing some additional renderings as well from other vantage points. And this is also from Dort Highway, but this is just a little more from car level view, if you will, a shot of the fire station side.
Okay.
So that's all I have for the presentation today. Is there anything else you'd like me to go back to or expand upon?
Any questions for anyone? So we're building this obviously to suit the needs for more than just the the immediate need. I mean, we're looking out, 30, 40 years too with this. So, the bays, the sleeping area, DPW, fleet storage, all that. So.
Right, right. Yeah, when we conducted the space programming exercise, there was future growth was part of the equation.
Mr. Lehman, any comments or thoughts? Or
I think the big challenge, I mean, we talked to you last year about when we initially had done the early design phase, and just the construction cost alone was at $30 million. It took a lot of work and several months to get it back down to about 23 or 23.5 million. You saw it tonight at about 24.5 million, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Again, we're still finalizing costs and waiting to see those to come in, but it ends up being a lot of tweaking from, right from roofing materials to things we didn't think of. One of the biggest challenges, obviously, was that instability of the soil. And again, we couldn't find any records going back of what existed there. We had nothing in our office, nothing in the assessing office about what was originally existed there back in the 30s or 40s. And so the materials that we found in that soil weren't from the old playland building. They were from whatever in the world used to exist there, 100 years ago and beyond. And so who knew that, whatever had been there, some certain type of manufacturing facility of something. And it had, clearly been, when they got rid of it, it was a lot easier to dig a hole and fill it up and put some dirt over it, unfortunately. Just an anticipated expense, but an expensive one as well if, we're trying to find the most cost-effective way to make sure. But the last thing we want to do is get it wrong. I'd rather spend the money now than do what we did and battle with the police department for, a decade trying to address the settling issues. And that's how we approached it, and that's what Rick and I shared with the design team, is that, explore every which way, but, nobody's going to be able to guarantee us against that there won't be any type of settling, but we're going to do whatever we need to do. We already said the concrete will be 8 inches thick on the DPW side because of just the weight of the Vector truck and trailers and the things, dump trucks that we pull through there. But even the parking lot and, what's going to be in there. And that's where the worst of the soils are, up on that north end. And that'll really be that drive-in, and then where the material storage is going to be. And that's where our biggest challenge has from the unstable soils. But I think we got a good plan moving it forward. And like I said, I think we expect to have that captured this week, and it won't be long before we're going out for bid and starting to really see, what kind of prices come in once we go out for bid, because I think these guys are good, and I think we'll be very good. But as Rick said, we've got some contingencies built in there, about $2.5 million, so that we can address. We expect it to come in, obviously, less total than the $30 million. But we also want to be prepared, and the contingencies are there just so that if there are surprises along the way, that we're able to handle that as it comes up.
Well, we did perform environmental tests on that property, so that's the good news, is that there's not any contamination that we've been able to locate anywhere on it. So that'd probably be the most costly issue if there were one. So I think Mr. Reardon.
So we looked at the facades before of the fire department, and some of them were more traditional. Were they a lot more expensive, just out of curiosity? I mean, was that?
Yeah, I mean, this is really just traditional brick in some split face or some CMU. I think maybe some of the original concept images might have shown metal paneling or something a little more costly.
Oh, some of the there were some places around that built fire stations that look like the old time fire stations.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about, really, the facade. I mean, is that much more expensive, or is it?
It can be. I mean, that was a big consideration too. We really simplified this down from where we were early conceptual design phase. Because that's one of the things BKV is really they're the fire station experts. That's why DAG brought them in as a partner. We went through a whole imaging phase on just, it was one of the first steps. Here's a dozen fire stations that were recently built. Here's what some are traditional, some are super modern, some are ultra progressive. And I think we ultimately boiled it down to traditional initially, and then, because of cost saving measures, I think we scaled that back even a little bit more. So that's why it might look a little more utilitarian.
Okay. That's what I was wondering, because
Yeah.
aesthetically, I mean, it's more pleasing to me, the older.
Yes, those are, yeah. Those tend to be a little bit, because you have a little more volume and roof area, typically more clear story windows are factored into that.
Okay, thanks.
Clerk Robertson?
Yeah, tell me again how we deal with the unsuitable soils.
So right now, the initial idea is they're called rammed aggregate piers. So we have the site has soil bearing capacity that's unsuitable. So what they do is they come in with a big rig and they drill a hole and extract some certain, I don't know what the diameter is, but they extract the soil. They fill it with aggregate, like a 21 AA, if you will, and then they
What that is, but okay.
It's like driveway stone, stuff you would see sometimes people put it in their driveway.
Okay.
And then they pack it down, they tamp it.
So it's a solvable issue through engineering.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's just there's multiple solutions. Some are more expensive, and so we're trying to find what's going to suit the needs of the facility and work within our budget.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. White?
I know that you don't have a definitive answer, but what is the cost likely to be? Is this a 6-figure fix? Is it a 7-figure fix?
For the soils, we think we have it reflected in what the budget is right now. There might
It's not additional beyond what you said. Okay, I thought.
if it is, it's I'll say marginal, but it's not a yeah. Some of that is reflected in here right now. We want to make sure, that's why there's still conversations going on about soil stabilization, because we want to make sure we're not, that number doesn't spike.
Jude, no fire pole either in it.
I was going to ask that.
I think in some of our early conversations, somebody brought that up, that they wanted one in there, but,
No, Bob gets his bifold doors before we get a pole.
okay.
Sorry, you moved.
All right.
It's, it's funny, but every member of the team, every time we're on a Teams meeting, and every single member who's working on the Grambling Township project always starts off with, I understand budgetary guidelines are an issue. I understand that being budget conscious is important. So I think I've driven the point home enough, and we spent enough time going in to really find solutions. Again, it still has to be long-term. It has to be functional. I don't want to cheapen it to a point, but it also had to, be cost-effective. And there isn't a member of the team who doesn't understand that as we work through this. So we're going to find solutions that are going to, like I said, I can't get a perfect guarantee like the concrete will never crack, because if you have concrete, it will crack. It's just a matter of,
Cracking is one thing, settling is a whole nother.
yeah, where it's an issue.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mr. Fike?
The community room, can you tell us about it? Is it like the one in the fire or police station?
I have not been in the police station, but it's essentially a big training size room.
Like as big as this?
Let me see if I can.
Not quite this size. I don't remember the exact
It's
dimensions,
close, but you can see it in the upper right-hand corner there.
Looks like it holds about 40, 50 people.
Yeah, it'll hold about 40 people. It'll have the similar technology with the monitors on the back wall.
And what would be an example of how we would use that room?
So the idea about having that community room in there, number one, we can use it for additional trainings for the fire department when they're going through that kind of thing. We saw it when we were at Allendale, and really liked the way they had their setup. Rick had met us down there and walked through, and we're like, this is awesome for training, for just bringing in firefighters or even doing any type of their training. The other thing that we can use it for is you can make that available to members of the community, just like we do the community room at the police department, which is booked more often than not. So it can also be a revenue source if we want to make it a a rental area. And then the other thing is, as you guys are well aware, with the changes to the election law, and we get kicked out of here a lot now with the early voting, it gives us another ability to have something set up for additional meeting space that we can utilize, including even if it needed to be to assist with the election voting in space where they could be able to set up there rather than in here for some of the election time. So I think we'll make really good use of that space.
So the counting boards for people that have to be sequestered would be great, you know. Still have access to this room.
Mm-hmm.
These rooms, even the police department conference room is booked. Like Mr. Lehman, it says if you drive by here on any given day, you'll see the police department's parking lot full, and it's being utilized daily. Okay, any other questions? Looks like exciting stuff, and
Yeah.
we're moving forward, and hoping to be pushing some dirt this spring.
Yes, we do. We'll see you back here at the end of schematic design phase for another update. Or I'm sorry, construction documentation phase. We're not going backwards.
All right.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you.
Rick.
Thanks, Dennis.
Okay, under new business, item A, the board will consider a motion to approve the purchase of the Polaris Ranger XP 1000 Super Graphite ATV with fire pump and trailer from Michigan Trailer LLC for a combined cost of $50,802.38, and authorize the Township Superintendent to sign all purchase and warranty contracts. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, how are you?
Good, how are you?
All right, so we have a aging ATV that's been around for about 25 years, and it's time to replace it. It's not to put it into retirement, but we need to have an updated vehicle. This is an ATV that will allow us to get back into fields for fighting larger fires, larger grass fires. Also, it is designed to carry patients. So if we have a victim that's out in the middle of a field or someplace where they have to walk for long distances, this can be used, and we can take that out there and pick the patient up and bring them back out to a roadway and have them out. So for example, last Wednesday with the tornado, sometimes we had some issues of vehicles getting around. This could have been used, and if anything, we're in the field. So I'm just asking for approval to purchase this Polaris unit, ATV, with a fire pump on it, and that's in the price for $47,000, and along with a trailer to haul the unit for an additional $3,600 for a total of $50,802.38, which is in our operating budget for this next year, or our capital budget.
So Chief, the fire pump on that, it connects to a water source of some sort, or?
It has its own water source. It has a 75-gallon tank that is carried on it, that we would have to fill it once we're there, and then come out and, operate in the field or wherever it's needed, and then come back.
Okay. Any questions? Yes, Clerk Roberts.
Reading from the agenda memo, this is used for fighting fires in large fields and wooded areas.
Yes.
Does that happen very often?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
I guess I don't hear about these
fields. You don't hear about it because we're normally there fast enough so it's held to a smaller size, but it grows very quickly. You know, fire increases, it doubles its size every 7 seconds. So a field fire pushed by wind rapidly takes over. If you watch some of the shows that were over on the west side of the country, a field fire there is horrendous. Texas, they are horrible with the wind pickup and just push that fire.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'm learning something new all the time. Very good. Then, if a motion is in order, Mr. Supervisor, I'd be happy to make that motion.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. On item 7A,
Is there support? Support by Treasurer Kilmer.
Treasurer supported by Kilmer.
Just
Very
one
good.
Final comment, yes, the tornado, if you've been by the building on Dort Highway alone, you'll see the challenge that anybody would have had getting into and past some of the debris that's sitting there.
Yes.
With any kind of larger vehicle. It was pretty tremendous damage there. Yes.
I was just curious, did we get bids on this? I mean, this sounds like a lot of money for an ATV. I guess it's bigger than...
Yes, we did. We received bids from Polaris Corporation. along with Michigan Trailer. And then M-Tech was another vendor. Theirs was a $53,000 just for the ATV. And then Polaris issued another bid to us, which was more along the fire related with the coloring and everything else. That was at $64,000.
Okay.
Shall I do the record roll call,
Yes,
Mr. Supervisor? Okay. Trustee White.
Yes.
Trustee Raridan.
Yes.
Trustee Fike.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Treasurer Kilmer.
Yes.
Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
6-0, motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, item B, the board will consider Resolution 24-11 to amend the resolution creating the Special Assessment District for Orchard Haven subdivision. Mr. Laddie?
Thank you. This is really just a housekeeping issue. When we noticed for the hearing to create the Special Assessment District and send notices to residents, we did notify all of the property owners in the district, and I think there's 222 or something. When we created the exhibit for the actual resolution creating the district, that exhibit didn't populate with all the property identification numbers. And so this resolution just repopulates that exhibit. We don't need to have a public hearing to do it, an additional public hearing. And so if you're so inclined, we'll take care of this housekeeping issue. And you will see Orchard Haven in 2 weeks because we'll have the confirmation of the role. So we'll have some folks here who will want to talk about the cost and the process and things. But this is, again, this is a minor repair.
Okay, Dr. Reardon makes that motion, supported by Mr. Fike.
Motion by Raridan, supported by Fike on item 7B. Trustee Fike.
Yes.
Trustee Raridan.
Yes.
Trustee White.
Yes.
Treasurer Kilmer.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
6-0, motion passes.
Thank you. Item C, the board will consider a motion to approve the 2024 Dust Control Program Authorization Agreement with the Genesee County Road Commission for 3 applications of calcium chloride on our unpaved roads here in Grand Blanc Township. Dennis, Mr. Lieber?
So this is something that comes before the board every year. We have to sign the agreement with the road commission. It does treats all the dirt roads in the township. They are always, it's up to us how many we want to do. If we want to do the extra third one, we generally always have because we do have an issue. So when they go through, first is 50-50 shared by the Road Commission in Grand Blanc Township, late April, early May. The second application is in late June, early July, and the third application is put in mid-September. So we split one, they pay for one, we pay for one. We also have them I had the map was too big to include in your packet, but it just shows basically every dirt road in Grand Blanc Township, and that includes, we have them do an application on Bicentennial Park's roadway as well. But we have to treat that one a little more often. We actually pay extra to do some additional treatments out at the Bicentennial Park just because of the amount of use that we get. And it does become somewhat of a dust bowl nuisance for the residents around there.
Any concerns, thoughts? Anybody care to make that motion? Mr. White?
Mr. White makes the motion,
Supported by Mr. Fike.
supported by Fike. Trustee Raridan.
Yes.
Trustee White.
Yes.
Trustee Fike.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Treasurer Kilmer.
Yes.
Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
6-0, motion passes.
Thanks. Item D, the board will consider Resolution 24-12 to change the name of Enterprise Drive to Enterprise Way. And this is in the new Enterprise Park off of Baldwin Road. Mr. Limita?
This has been somewhat of a challenge that came to our attention from one of the businesses, Global Technologies, out at the new Enterprise Park. And it has to do with them getting phone calls from truck drivers who are over in Springfield Township who say, I'm having trouble locating your building. And the problem is, no matter which GPS mapping app that is your favorite, and you would punch in, for example, like 9335 Enterprise Drive, it would bring up Springfield Township, because even though they're looking in Grand Blanc Township, the Enterprise Drive is in that area where the Holly zip code 48442 encompasses a portion of the north side of Baldwin. Typically it's on the south side, but there's a little jog up. It has to do with where the mail delivery is being routed from. We tried to address this multiple times over the last few years. The last one, we got the 48507, last line preferred to Grand Blanc Township. They would not let us do that for Holly. At the time, it wasn't a big deal, but now you find out that it is a big deal. We tried to work through the road commission to figure out their way to do it, tried to contact the Google Maps, but it's Waze, it's every mapping app. So the issue, if you put in Enterprise Way, then there's one, I think, on the west side of the state somewhere. So it became, well, no one's going to confuse the west side of the state like they will with Davisburg. And so just that change, we tried to work through the road commission. We asked them if they could just change the road since they assign addresses. They kept telling us that we just need to contact the suppliers and let them know. But it's not a supplier. It's not an Amazon delivery vehicle. It's every single truck driver that's getting sent there. And we've got, obviously, the distributorship opening up besides, with the other businesses that are there, Fessler Bowman and Global Technologies and soon to be Plastic Omnium. We finally looked through and found that in Genesee County Road Commission ordinance that they state pretty clearly that they, don't have the jurisdiction to change names of private roads because it is a private road. We believe that this solution will be the most effective solution, is to have you pass a resolution, then the owners will take the resolution that you passed and they will forward that out to all the mapping. They'll send it out to consumers, everybody along the way, and we hope that that will fix the issue. If we could have just got the 48439 zip code through everywhere, that would have also fixed the issue, but apparently that is not possible through the U.S. Postal Service, and we can't bring up the last line for 10 years after the last time because you can only appeal to USPS once every 10 years. I learned from the last go-around. So we're still about 7 years out before we can appeal and let them know what a difficulty the 48442 zip code is causing us in certain areas of the township.
Right.
Okay.
Somebody care to make that motion?
I'll make the motion, Mr. Supervisor.
Okay. Supported by Treasurer Kilmer.
Supported by Treasurer Kilmer on item 7D. Trustee Fike.
Yes.
Trustee White.
Yes.
Trustee Raridan.
Yes.
Treasurer Kilmer.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
6-0, motion passes.
Item E, the board will consider resolution 2413 to purchase, acquire, and construct capital improvements and to publish the notice of intent to issue municipal securities in an amount not to exceed $35 million for the new building to house the Department of Public Works and Fire Station Number 1. Mr. Lemata?
So this resolution is required to give the residents and taxpayers of Grand Blanc Township the opportunity to seek a referendum on going into debt to finance those buildings, the DPW and fire station building. We put it at $35 million. You just saw the presentation from Mr. Erickson with Plant Moran Real Point, that an all-in part of the building at $30 million. Don't forget, we also have, between the campus fund and the ARPA funds that are allocated to the fire department, about $3.5 million that we would put in cash down on that $30 million. We've got over $2.5 million in contingencies built in there. I truly think it's probably going to be, much closer to the $25 million mark, $25 million. A big part of that, obviously, or the biggest part of that's going to be the enterprise funds. The general funds are only responsible for their portion of the shared lobby facilities as well as the fire department. So I think that we would safely, and it was initially going to be at $30 million, but bond counsel suggested that you put it at a much, much higher rate that you couldn't conceivably exceed no matter what. That's where the $35 million came from. And this notice of intent, if the board chooses to move this resolution forward, then gets published. They have 45 days in which they could go out and gather signatures and put this as a referendum vote to the voters about whether we should move forward to issue municipal securities to fund the construction projects.
How many signatures? I'm sorry. How many signatures would somebody need?
10% or
15,000.
Whichever's less.
Mr. Kellner?
What happens if voters say no?
Well, if they decided that they want to move this forward, then we wouldn't be constructing a building.
We would not.
We would not.
Is it likely to come to a referendum, or?
Typically, no. Anytime that you're going to issue municipal securities over $10 million, you have to do the notice of intent. And it really is for the voters to get, they have 45 days to do it, but it would really most likely turn into more of an information seeking, like what are we going to cut out? Can we afford to issue this kind of securities? And I think we would be able to show them that one of the things that we have done to be fiscally responsible to prepare ourselves for this kind of an expenditure is that we did the right thing. We negotiated changes to contracts that made a huge, huge saving, tens of millions of dollars in savings in our unfunded liabilities. By doing that, we've lessened the amount of expenditures that we have to make from the general fund. So it's being able to show people that the township can afford to pay these bonds back over time without an increase in taxes, and we can do that. So I think it's probably more just an educational exercise. But yeah, if they were able to get 10% of the registered voters or 15,000, whichever is less, and they put it on, it would have to go on to an election where all voters would have the opportunity to weigh in on it. And to answer your question, if they were to vote no, then we would stop. The construction would stop there. We wouldn't issue anything. And if they does go to a referendum within 45 days, if they were to submit their required signatures, we would have to place the entire project on hold. Unfortunately, I'm sure that will drive the costs up even more. We don't know where bond costs are going to be. I mean, right now I feel very confident where we're at. So I would hope that doesn't happen. I think if it does, like I said, it's an educational opportunity. It just means that we didn't get enough of the education information out there to the voters so that they could feel confident in our ability, or maybe it's just whether they recognize the need, and we'd have to walk them through the fire department and show them where we're at currently. That was never designed to last even this long. We thought we would have that move forward in 2 years back in 2019 when we moved the fire department in there. We thought we'd have them in their new building in 2021, and now it's going to be 2025 as it is. There's definitely a need, and it certainly goes to the health, safety, and welfare of every one of our firefighters. Is a pressing need for the construction of that building from a general fund standpoint.
I think we could show the need. It's relatively easy. It's not a want. It's a definite need, especially with the growing of our township and aging of the infrastructure we have next door. I mean, even like you said, the safety and health of our firefighters is priority, and that's the main reason.
We're serving 40,000 residents now from when we bought and moved into this building and configured this thing in to be a municipal office complex. We put the police department together and moved out, bought us a little bit of time. Now we've got people operating out of closets. What used to be storage closets are now offices. And with the change in election law, we had to greatly expand the clerk space because we had no choice but to do so in order to accommodate the changes in election law and just for a secure environment, the amount of absentee voter ballots that we're now required to deal with. And so if anybody wants a tour of the building, you know, it'd be happy to show them that we're just plumb out of space. I can't wedge in another person anywhere unless we move the mop out.
Yeah. Mr. Fike?
So when the police station was built, was it the same scenario where it had to go into a newspaper and anybody could then put the signatures out, but then they didn't?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing to keep in mind also is the bond for the police department. Mr. Lehman, when is that paid off? Within the
Be
next
paid in 2031. That will be completed. We did a refinance of those bonds in 2016 or into 2015 or beginning of 2016 when I first got here. Saved a couple $1 million by doing that. That would put the payoff right at 2031. So by the time we start paying these bonds in 2026, 2027, we're really just a few years of overlap, and the police bonds will drop off.
So that's a significant savings right there with the police bonds being paid off.
You know, you can never tell these things just with the cycles of the economy, but it turns out that was a brilliant move, given what rates were then and what rates are now. I mean, and probably you'll see these refinanced at some point in time. But
absolutely,
it really restructuring that debt in the police department was a big savings.
Yeah, easily saved $2 million for the township taxpayers.
Right. And in addition, with the savings we've had on retirement, another huge savings. So did we have a motion? I forgot where we're at with that.
We have not, but one is in order, Mr. Supervisor.
It is. Somebody care to make that motion? Mr. Fike?
Mr. Fike makes the motion.
Supported by Dr. Raridan.
Supported by Dr. Raridan. Very good. Trustee White.
Yes.
Trustee Raridan.
Yes.
Trustee Fike.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Treasurer Kilmer.
Yes.
Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
6-0, motion passes.
Okay. Future agenda items. Thank you, guys. The future agenda item is strategic plan, branding and signage. And I know Ms. Roberts has been working on this. We have some exciting stuff to share with you in the next meeting. Moving on to board reports. Anything, Dr. Reardon? Anything, Mr. Kilmer? No. Anything, Mr. Robertson?
No, Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Fike?
I just had a question.
Sure.
Now, I know you may be getting to this in your comments, and I'd like to hear perhaps from Dennis, too, about the tornado.
I'll bring it up, and I'm sure Dennis and our chiefs will.
Like what happened, and give us a little report on that.
All right. Mr. White, anything? Nope. Okay. Just a few comments, and I'll let Mr. Limita and our two chiefs that are here comment further, but I just wanted to start out by saying, thanks to our police and fire here for a great job. Thankfully, after, and I'm sure all of you've had a chance to see on whether it's photos or driving around the devastation that took place here, the buildings that it hit. Thankfully, the residential buildings that it hit weren't as substantial as some of the commercial, but the damage, I've seen houses where the trees on 360 degrees around the house were totally demolished, but the house was still standing intact, and I'm not sure how that happens. Went over to the park that morning, and pavilion was blown into the small little pond we have there. Picked up the 200-pound grills that were punched into the ground and cemented in, were blown just like they were lawn furniture across the park. What else? Light poles that are only probably 5 inches in diameter, bent completely over. For the wind to be able to do that to a light pole, you can imagine the force. Just those scenes. But our police were out there early. Fire, making sure. I mean, you should have seen the down lines. I did go up to the building on Dort Highway when it was closed off, and the power lines, what have you, is just a web of wires, and those lines were very high voltage. They weren't just your normal, residential wires. So our people, hats off to our police and fire for the phenomenal job. And sirens sounded. Probably most people in Grand Blanc Township and city woke up to the alerts on their phones. If you keep your phone on at night, and it jars you when you hear that, and then the sirens as well. So I know some communities had some issues with a few of their sirens. I haven't heard that any of our sirens had issues, but if we get that report, I guess it's our responsibility to fix those. But I think our emergency systems went well. But Mr. Lehman, anything to add on the tornado in particular? Or?
Yeah, just a couple things. First, the first touchdown was over at Bicentennial Park. So it started there. And if you saw the National Weather Service report, 450 yards wide, 5.7 miles long. The destruction could have been incredibly devastating, as well as injuries and loss of life. So we're incredibly thankful that that didn't happen. Yeah, we had some damage out at the park, the playground at the South Pavilion. That is the one that the board has approved the replacement of. So if it had to rip one down, I'm glad it ripped the one down that we are planning to replace later this year. The parts of the pavilion, we noticed in the pictures that were posted from the Indian Hill subdivision in the city, we found parts of our pavilion that was missing that didn't go into the pond. Were in somebody's yard over in Indian Hills. So that was a couple of miles that pavilion headed out and landed in the city. So we're thankful that that also didn't injure anybody. We do have the insurance adjuster will be here tomorrow. Matt, I forgot to let Chris know that, but I think at 10:30 tomorrow, okay. That he will be out there to do a walkthrough, and obviously we lost some picnic tables. Shout out to Matt and his crew from Parks and Recreation, because they really got out there and got after it to make sure the park was safe. One of the most beautiful trees that we always decorate during the holiday tree lighting, unfortunately, was snapped into 3 pieces and will no longer be a part of our holiday decorations. But again, they did an amazing job of getting out there and getting that park opened back up after only 2 days. Shout out to all the folks who sent emails saying, hey, how can we help? We'll come in and clean up. We were fortunate we didn't really need to utilize them. It could have been much worse, but we still have a few things that we got to fish out of the pond, like some porta potties, some picnic tables, portions of the pavilion. Again, shout out to the fire department. These are those things where these guys train all the time to be able to do emergency response, but it's really hard to train for what happens when a freak tornado comes down and rips bounces through your community over 6 miles. Obviously, the biggest devastation that we saw was in that commercial park in that building over by Dort and Reed. They did an amazing job, no loss of life. There were some truck drivers who were trapped behind the building. Our guys were able to get in there and get them out safely. They were actually in their trucks when the tornado struck. So really proud of our firefighters, and Chief, thank you to your guys, because all those trainings that they do, you don't know when you're going to need it. And again, you can't specifically train for something like this, but you saw the devastation to be able to get in and get those guys out safely when you got downed power lines with 48,000 volts cooking through them. Somebody had to be able to get back in there and get them out. So that was awesome. And same thing with our police department from a safety perspective, the way these guys jumped out and were there. You can't specifically train for it with a police department either, yet in order to keep citizens safe, get everybody out of there. Thank you also to the residents of Grand Blanc Township or Grand Blanc area, just for, I know it's curious, do you want to get down that road and look at that damage? So we really thank you showing their restraint and staying out of there so that our emergency responders could actually get in there and get that job done. But I just feel incredibly lucky that we were able to not have loss of life or serious injuries when you think about, when you see the destruction that it did in some of these areas. And it's just, thank God it really We were incredibly lucky as a community that it decided to hopscotch through our community and not create a lot of havoc.
I don't know if everybody's aware of this. I think there might have been in some media reports, but the industrial building that was hit the worst had workers in there until about 1 o'clock in the morning, and they departed at about 1, and the tornado hit about 1:15 or 1:20.
Yeah.
So that was a very fortunate situation as well. Mr. Fike?
If they're watching, perhaps, and residents have damage with trees, can they just chop it up and put it out with a regular trash, or how does that work?
Well, I mean, unless they hire a company to come and do it, you know.
Right.
But we don't have any
They can put it out with a regular trash?
We don't have at this point.
regular trash.
Yeah.
No.
No.
So what do they do?
Well, probably need to either use it for their own fire or for hire a company to come and clean it up for them. We're talking logs, what have you.
They won't take that.
And I don't believe the state will allow it to go into a landfill either. So they're gonna have to figure out what to do with that.
Joel?
Free firewood.
Mr. Kilmer?
There are size regulations, I think it's 4 feet by whatever,
sticks.
as far as what you can put out to the curb.
But they're not gonna take logs or anything.
That compost won't start until April.
Yeah, that's correct. It doesn't, the yard waste pickup does not start until April. This is an issue, this would be obviously an issue for a person's homeowner's policy. If they have tree removal and coverages of that type, I would think. So.
But yeah, the landfill won't allow large trees and things. Mr. White?
What is covered or likely to be covered by insurance policy for stuff at the park? I frankly didn't even think any of it would be, so I'm sort of.
Obviously the pavilion, because it was a total loss, snapped off and gone. And then I don't know what we do as far as we'll have the conversation with the adjuster tomorrow about the playscape, because, and I told our agent, like, this was one that was slated for replacement. So, we appreciate the fact that it's a $300,000 playscape that's been destroyed. What we really lost was the loss of use for maybe 2 or 3 months, because we were going to replace it. We'll have that conversation. And then the picnic tables, sorted, things like that. But, the trees aren't going to be replaced, obviously. It's going to be the structure. We also had some roofing damage, some fascia off the Little League building, a lot of shingles blown off, that kind of thing. So all that will be looked at by the adjusters tomorrow, and they'll come up with something for us.
Go ahead, Clerk Robertson.
Debris removal, would that be covered? I mean, you said things were thrown into the pond. How are we going to get these large items out of there?
Generally they will hire somebody to come out. I mean, whether they come out in boats or we have to have a crane or something. And that's what we'll have that conversation with the adjuster tomorrow, is like, how do we get these things out of the pond? Our guys did an amazing job of most of that cleanup with the downed trees and the lumber that had, been ripped apart, the playground equipment. They did a great job of cleaning that up. Will the insurance company will also have that conversation? I mean, if they want to compensate them for the time that they spent in the cleanup, I'm sure that's part of the equation.
The one thing I want to say too is that we had so many offers of assistance too from individuals within the township. We had a high school volunteer group that still wants to help us. Receive phone calls from quite a few and emails from surrounding townships, even as far away as Lake Orion, Orion Township, contacted and said, hey, what do you guys need, but Flushing, Atlas, Mundy. So really appreciate, everyone reaching out to us. As far as cleanup, most of it was on private property, so sending our people or volunteers loose on somebody else's property probably wouldn't be a good idea. So at this point, we're encouraging everybody to show up for our cleanup day. And that leads me into our next point, is that we have our cleanup day scheduled for April 27th. And it's going to be from 9 to 11:30. We're getting the MTA, or Mass Transit Authority, involved. And the idea is that we're going to get groups, companies, organizations involved. Meet at the meetup location is going to be Faith Lutheran Church. It's a Saturday. April 27th from 9 to 11:30 is what we're planning with the lunch afterwards. So we'll meet at Faith Lutheran, and the buses actually will take our groups and volunteers to various sites within the township to do some pickup of litter and trash, what have you, debris that collects along the road. And with the lack of snow, it's all very evident right now where it's laying. So there's lots of stuff to pick up, and it's good this time of year because we don't have a whole lot of brush growing that we have to get through to get to it. So we'd appreciate everybody's involvement, and we're going to be recruiting sponsors for the lunch and what have you. So we encourage groups that want to help us with the tornado cleanup, come on out and you can help us. Probably a little bit of that might be from the tornado. One other thing that mentioned MTA, they're going to be expanding greatly into the hydrogen. We actually had a meeting with them here, Ms. Roberts, Mr. Lehman, and myself, and talked a bit about their hopes of what they're planning as a training facility right down here on the corner of Maple and Dort Highway. And ties in great with what Plastic Omnium plans to do here. But they want to partner with us on a number of things in the future, and I think they're going to be a great corporate neighbor for us as they expand their operation. With that, Mr. Lehman, anything you want to discuss? Okay, Mr. Laddie?
Just one thing. As we're sitting here talking about insurance and trees, I happen to be, I accidentally brought my policy, my homeowner's policy with me.
Yes.
Home. I have just a standard policy. It has $1,500 for tree debris removal. So anybody who's affected, check your policies, Clerk Robertson said.
Yep.
Good point.
Exactly. They probably have already, but if they haven't, they can contact them by now. But I know we had quite an influx of vendors wanting to be on the Facebook page because I saw them wanting to be added from all over the state for tree removal, for roofing companies, what have you, wanting to join our groups here locally. So anyways, with that, anything else that we need to cover? Our next board meeting will be March 19th, and take a motion to adjourn if somebody cares to make that motion.
I make it.
Okay, Mr. Kilmer, supported by Mr. Fike.
Kilmer and Fike to adjourn.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank
We
you.
are adjourned at 7:02 p.m.